everyone. Welcome to the Tennis Files podcast. I am your host, mehrban, and this podcast is all about helping you improve your tennis game, whether it's technique, strategy, fitness, or the mental game. We're here to level up your skills one episode at a time. And today's episode is going to be a little bit different, but in a really fun and insightful way. I recently got back from Las Vegas, where I competed in the World Series of Poker, which I love doing. This is my third time going. And I played in a few events, and I'm really excited to have made it to the min cash, which is the coveted area where you're able to actually get as far enough into the tournament to cash. Usually this is 15% of the field. Obviously, I would have loved to go farther and win it, but it was quite a grind. But out of over 4,500 players, I placed 611th, which enabled me to cash in that event. And it was a great experience, but it got me thinking, there are actually a lot of similarities between poker and tennis, and the lessons that I took away from the poker table applied directly to the tennis court. So in this episode, I want to walk you through 8 powerful connections between these two sports. Yes, I think poker is a sport, even though you're not moving around, but at least mentally you're very, very engaged, and it's truly a game of skill. So I want you to understand, or help you to understand, how you can become a better tennis player through the linkage with poker. So let's dive in. So the first point is that in both games, both sports, you have to survive in advance. Tournaments in both poker and tennis are all about survival. So in both tennis and poker, when you're sitting in a tournament setting or playing in a tournament setting, it's all about staying alive and surviving. You don't have to dominate every single point or every single hand. Famously, the top player in the world will win, 52% or so of points only. So similarly, you don't have to win every hand. You just have to make the right decisions to avoid elimination and move forward. So in tennis, it might mean grinding through a match when you're not feeling 100% or not executing your plans to how you desire to, but you don't have to every single point. And similarly in poker, it's folding a bad hand or avoiding a risky spot to stay in the tournament and hopefully build your chips, or at least, again, survive. So I had plenty of those moments in Vegas where I had a big stack and then I got unlucky in 2 consecutive hands, and all of a sudden my stack was down to like 1/4 of what it was, but I had to stay focused, conserve my energy, and pick my spots carefully to keep going, whether that was going all in, at times that I thought were proper, or just folding my hand. So very similar in this aspect of needing to survive in advance. Number 2, decision-making under pressure. So in both poker and tennis, you hit these critical moments, critical inflection points where one decision can determine the outcome of the match or the tournament. So, of course, in tennis, that can be 6-all in the tie break or 30-40 on your serve in the third set. Whereas in poker, it's when somebody goes all in and you have to decide whether to call or fold, and one mistake can knock you out. So I had a hand where I called pre-flop. That's before they put the universal cards, on the table where everybody can like combine those cards with your 2 cards in your hand. So I called pre-flop with ace-jack instead of re-raising pre-flop. And it turned out that my opponent, one of the opponents who also had called before me, had 10-8 offsuit, which is a very weak hand, but they ended up flopping a huge hand post-flop, and they ended up knocking me out because I also had a strong hand and I was out of position against them. But if I had re-raised pre-flop like I should have, in fact, I thought about re-raising pre-flop and something told me to just call, which was, not what I should have done. If I had re-raised pre-flop, they would have folded 10-8 offsuit, a very weak hand pre-flop, as I mentioned, and I would have won the pot, but I didn't, and then I got knocked out. So it's similar in tennis, where if you make the wrong decision in a high-pressure moment, maybe it's 10-9 in the tiebreak third set, and you decide to, go for down the line forehand winner instead of keeping the point going, then the match can slip away. So decision making is a skill you have to train in both poker and tennis. Third, is preparation equals performance. So if you want to perform your best, preparation is a non-negotiable. In tennis, that means getting the proper amount of rest, nutrition, warm up and recovery. Similar with poker, you need mental stamina. It's so huge. Also physical alertness and the discipline to stay focused for hours. So that one day where we went from 4,500 players to, I don't know how many they ended with. It was probably 200 or so. By the time I got knocked out, I had played 12 hours of poker that day. Imagine playing poker for 12 hours. You need discipline, patience, and that focus, and that comes from having a good night's sleep and nutrition and so forth. So I made sure to hydrate, eat well, and also walk around and take some breaks during the tournaments. I stretched as well because the sharper that I felt, the better that I played. So it's the same for playing tennis on the court. Your body and mind have to be ready if you want to play your best tennis. Number 4, possibly one of my favorite parallels, is reading your opponent, knowing your opponent, and then figuring out the right strategy against your opponent. So in both tennis and poker, your ability to read your opponent is really everything. Unless you're just vastly superior in everything, then of course you can just play your own game. But reading your opponent, especially when you're playing USTA and you're playing similar rated players, reading your opponent is huge. So in tennis, you try to scout the tendencies of your opponent. Are they consistent? Are they aggressive? Are they a big hitter? Do they struggle on the run? So you try to adjust your game plan accordingly. Similarly, in poker, you observe how your opponents play hands. Are they loose? Are they tight? Do they bluff often? When do they bet aggressively? So, for example, if you're playing someone super tight in poker, or even just tight players, you can bluff more. You can bet more often, even without hands, because they're going to fold more. In contrast, if your opponent in poker is overly aggressive, then you can trap them with big hands, but maybe you want to tighten your range of cards to play stronger hands so that you can withstand their betting when they are betting against you, which they will often as an aggressive player. The same thing in tennis. If your opponent is, for example, a counter puncher, or people say pusher, you will counter that by coming to the net to try and finish the point, or perhaps bringing your opponent to the net because they're stronger at the baseline and weaker at the net with that type of playing style. So you try to adjust based on your opponent in both tennis and poker. Number 5, you want to expand your toolkit as much as possible in both games, both sports. To succeed in either game, you need tools and you need to keep learning new ones. So if you don't expand your toolkit, let's say, for example, in tennis, your technique, developing different shots, perhaps you develop a more consistent drop shot or a slice serve. In poker, that's developing more aggressive play, for example, or, maybe check raising. You need to unlock these new strategies and techniques. So, for example, in the ace-jack hand that I mentioned earlier, my mistake wasn't just the wrong decision. It was not having the confidence, let's say, to 3-bet in that spot where it was ingrained in me. We talk about the 4 stages of, try to get this right, conscious incompetence all the way towards unconscious competence. Hopefully I got that right. But basically being able to do something, without thinking. So I hadn't got to that stage yet. Sorry, my alarm just went off. That stage where I just automatically would 3-bet or re-raise in that spot pre-flop. So I had the right hand to re-raise pre-flop. I just didn't use that tool. Then, I learned from that. I tried to learn very quickly. So then in the very next tournament, I had a very similar spot with ace-jack pre-flop. And then I re-raised pre-flop. And I took down the hand, and then I did this several other times where I would re-raise with like a hand that maybe previously I would have just called. And then I would make a continuation bet on the flop, even though I didn't have anything. And then my opponents thought I was strong, so they folded. So it's all about developing those tools. Again, developing a kick serve or a forehand, the topspin forehand on the run that'll enable you to then employ more advanced strategies, and therefore you have more tools in your toolkit, more strategies you can employ, and then you can win more matches or build your chip stack. So both games, both sports punish players who stop learning, and they reward those who keep expanding their toolkit. They say if you're not learning, then you're getting behind, you're falling behind. So number 6 is you need to study, review, and evolve, kind of similar. But in poker and tennis, the top players are the ones who review their hands or their matches They analyze what went wrong and what they could do better next time. If you're not reviewing, you're simply repeating what you've been doing, and that'll keep you stuck. So whether, it's a missed volley on match point or a poor read on an opponent at the table, you want to take the time to learn from it. That's how you get better. I know a lot of tennis players, they don't want to watch their footage. I've even talked to 4 or 5 players who are good players. And I say, have you watched yourself on tape? And they say, oh, no, I'd rather watch TV or something. But you need to review, and then you'll really see, how you're performing and where you can improve, and then put in the work to improve. Number 7, maybe this sounds cliche, but it's really important to have fun when you're playing both games. So if you're not having fun, then your performance will suffer. When I play tennis and also poker, I try to tell myself, hey, you're in a privileged position. A lot of people aren't able to play these sports. They either they don't have the financial abilities to, or physical, capabilities to, or health. So I'm trying to enjoy and be grateful for these opportunities. And when I'm stressed out at the poker table or in tennis, then I tend to misread situations, or I rush. When I'm too tense on the court, I tighten up and make unforced errors. So poker and tennis are both more enjoyable, and you'll be more successful when you embrace the process, stay relaxed as possible, although of course acknowledge you'll be nervous sometimes, and try your best to let go of the outcome. And finally, number 8 is being friendly opens doors in both poker and tennis. I also realized how much being friendly matters in both of these communities. At the poker table, I made a point to talk with the players around me, and it just really helped me, as number 7 said, enjoy my time there. And it also made the experience obviously much better. And in one case, a competitor next to me, pre-flop, instead of raising, he actually checked to me instead. And he said, you've been really nice and pleasant, so I won't raise you this hand. Let's just play the pot. And then I ended up winning the hand. And it's small things like this where, conversely, if you are not a friendly personality, then people might be more aggressive against you in both poker and tennis. So again, in tennis, the friendlier and more positive you are, the more teams as well that you'll get invited to, the more partners you'll be partnered up with, and the more opportunities you'll get to play as well. You're getting invited to more teams because you'll be perceived as more of a fun person. Hopefully not just perception, but reality, right? You don't want to just fake it. But people want to be around people they like in both poker and tennis, and it just makes it more fun. So try to smile when you're playing and talk to people. And of course, there'll be times when you need to focus. I was talking with people at the table, but then when it came time for my hand, or maybe, kind of ebbs and flows, where it's sometimes you have your focus hat on, and other times, you relax a little bit, because you can't just be 100% focused 12 hours straight. That's very difficult, at least, as a beginner, intermediate, even advanced players. And speaking of the collab for both poker and tennis, if you're watching the video of this, I've got my poker hat here and a tennis shirt. So I tried to keep the theme going, although this is actually a World Poker Tour hat, which I did interview Vince Van Patten from World Poker Tour a little while ago. But the tournament that I played was a World Series of Poker. Both are great tours. And so, just to wrap this up, tennis and poker may look different on the surface. Obviously tennis, you're moving around a lot more. It's very physical, but really they're not that far apart. Both are really heavy on the need to focus, adaptability, smart decision-making, emotional control, preparation, and having fun along the way. So whether you're hitting forehand or holding pocket kings, the lessons are the same. Show up ready, play your game, read the situations, and keep growing. I also want to leave you with a quote, as I often do at the end of the show, and this one is by Jack Canfield. And Jack said, "Don't worry about failures, worry about the chances you miss when you don't even try." Love that quote. So I just want to thank you so much for listening. And if you enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you'd share it with a fellow tennis or even poker friend, and leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to help support the show, whichever app you use, although Apple tends to help the show out the most in terms of increasing visibility and so forth. So until next time, keep improving your tennis game. Stay sharp, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Tennis Files podcast. This is your host, mehrban, signing out.